Hello and welcome to the Auto Shaman podcast, the only podcast dedicated to empowering you to act with confidence and achieve automotive enlightenment. Each week, I, the Auto Shaman, answer your car-related questions and concerns, giving you the power to make the right decisions. Email the Auto Shaman at theautoshamanpodcast@gmail.com. That's SHAMAN at gmail.com. Follow us on all major platforms, and if you like what you hear, why not tell a friend? Fear not, I have been beyond the pale and can guide you through the darkness. Welcome back, everybody. Episode 3 of the Auto Shaman podcast. I saw some auto news this week that gave me kind of a chuckle, and then we got a couple of questions as well in the email. I was reading today about a recall that Volvo issued, and it looks like Ford is having a similar one as well. And the Volvo recall in particular affects over 400,000 cars, and I'll tell you why it made me giggle a little bit. Because it's the first recall I've ever heard of that is resolved by driving in the manner you're supposed to, i.e., a safe one. The recall relates to the backup camera on the vehicle, specifically that the software in the module that processes the image coming from the camera fails to display it on the screen. And why this presents a safety concern is that you stand some liability in running someone over, apparently. Um, why this was funny to me is that even with a backup camera, you're kind of supposed to turn your body and look where you're going. Um, Backup cameras are good for checking that everything is clear behind you before you set out, and where they really shine is when you're parallel parking and want to get an idea for how close to the car behind you are. But as far as driving safely goes, you need to look where you're going, even if it's in reverse. All the same, I was surprised to learn that there's actually been federal regulation mandating that all new vehicles have a backup camera. So if it's not working, that becomes a safety concern, and thusly a recall was issued. How do we determine if a recall needs to be issued on a car? A lot of people think that a manufacturer's going to reissue a recall because they have a manufacturing defect, which is true, but they also assume that those recalls are going to come because the vehicle is no longer reliable due to that manufacturing defect. And that's not always necessarily the case. They may issue a service campaign where if they see the vehicle and it's still under warranty and there's something they can do to prevent a major failure in the future, they will do it. And they may issue what we call a TSB, or a technical service bulletin, that it sort of aids in diagnosing a pattern failure. So the pattern failure is the root of a recall, and it's when we see the same thing over and over again. Car comes in, it's got this complaint, and this is the result. Where a recall comes into effect is we're seeing a pattern failure, and there's a high likelihood that someone's going to die as a result of this failure. Prior to 1966, manufacturers did not issue recalls, and they quite happily produced cars that they knew were dangerous, but they made money on them, they were good looking, and they sold well, so they really didn't care. Resultingly, in 65, Ralph Nader comes out with the book Dangerous at Any Speeds, and it pertains particularly to the Chevy Corvair and the fact that they knew it had a suspension system that if you put it into too hard of a turn, the thing was going to roll over. And even in a modern car, a rollover is not a fun experience, and particularly in one without airbags. And in spite of the fact that they knew it, they continued to produce the car. And they got quite the spanking in a public relations sort of standpoint from that book. And a year after, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration was established. Also known as NHTSA, this is the organization that monitors these complaints as reported by consumers, as discovered by their own investigations, and hopefully as reported by the manufacturer. So a recall can be issued at the behest of NHTSA, or it can be issued from the manufacturer. They do have duty to report safety failures, and they're also incentivized to do so in the regard that if NHTSA decides you need a recall and they didn't hear from you, they're going to smack you pretty hard with fines. Let's take a look at a more serious recall from recent memory. We'll take a look at a couple actually. But the big one I wanted to talk about because apparently GM didn't learn their lesson in the early 60s. You may remember that in the early and mid 2000s, there was a pretty major recall issued for the Chevy Cobalt, the Saturn Ion, and the Pontiac G5. And the failure pertained to their ignition switches. If you had too much stuff on your keychain, which you shouldn't, by the way, the ignition cylinder was prone to finding itself in the accessory or off position. Now, this is terrible if you're going down the road. If the engine turns off, you lose power steering. If the engine turns off, you, after a short amount of time, will lose power brakes. And if you've ever experienced that, you can stand on your brake pedal with both legs and give it everything you not and everything you've got and still coast into a building quite happily. Also, as a result, airbags were failing to deploy. And resultingly, 124 people died in accidents where the vehicle shut off going down the road. The person driving the vehicle wasn't able to stop or avoid a collision, and the airbags didn't go off. 124 dead, 275 injured. So that's a problem. And it's a problem that GM very well knew about and had discussions about and issued emails to each other about. And when it became clear to NHTSA that they were aware of this issue, they hit them with some pretty stiff penalties. They got a $900 million criminal fine and paid out $575 million in settlements to families. They pulled in 30 million vehicles to fix this issue, and it hurt them pretty dearly. As rightly it should. They knew they were going to kill people, and they continued to let the vehicle go down the road. It's sort of a similar story in a recall campaign I guarantee you've heard about, and that would be the Takata airbag recalls. Now, this was a scary failure. Your airbags would fail to deploy, dangerous on its face. But in addition to failing to deploy, they'd shoot hot metal in your face. People bled out and died after an accident because shards of hot metal were exploded into their face from an airbag. And the manufacturer was aware of it, and Honda was aware of it very early and did some private investigations and failed to do anything about it on a grand scale. They issued a local recall, but they knew that this airbag was in Toyotas, Hondas, Dodges, Jeeps, I believe Chevrolets, all kinds of vehicles. Manufacturers don't tend to produce their own airbags. We mentioned this last week in my podcast that a car, while it may be assembled by a manufacturer, comes from a large array of suppliers. And Takata was the biggest supplier of airbags in the world. And as a result, they also went out of business. And a huge campaign was undertaken to bring these vehicles in. And there are still vehicles on the road that have not received their recall for the Takata airbag. And at this time, there are people driving down the road waiting for essentially a claymore to go off in their face. So this brings me to the real point of what I wanted to talk about today. And that is, how do you check if you have an active recall? So best thing you could do is schedule a service appointment with a dealer. They're going to run your VIN and they're going to search for your active recalls. They're also probably going to take a look at any service campaigns that may be out there. They're going to be looking for TSBs as well. Failing that, and many of you, rightly, potentially, don't want to go to a dealer unless you absolutely have to. So, one thing you can do is go to nhtsa.gov, nhtsa.gov. This is the official public facing website for the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. And you can plug your VIN in, and they've made it easier than that. You can plug in your license plate number, and they've got some helpful information on the page as well about where you can find your VIN. And here's a top tip: don't write it down. Like, you've got a camera sitting in your pocket, take a picture of it. It's 17 characters long. You're going to get one wrong. If your handwriting's as poor as mine, you're going to struggle to read it. So take a picture of your VIN number, go to nhtsa.gov, plug that thing in, and see if you have any active recalls. Now, I know by doing this, you were hoping to avoid a trip to the dealer. However, if you do have an active recall, it is going to require you to make a trip to the dealer. They are the only people who are approved to complete recall repairs, and they're going to be paying for it. You should not be paying out of pocket for a recall. It's a safety issue, it's a manufacturing issue, and the manufacturer owes you to replace these components that present a liability to your health and life. So, you know, check for recalls. A regular trip to a good mechanic, like we talked about in my oil change video, they should be checking for recalls as well and making sure you're aware of that so that you can get them addressed. And then if you do have something active, even if it's as silly as your backup camera may not work, s- schedule a time to go into the dealer and have it repaired. Some of these recalls will say outright, do not drive your car any longer. It is a danger to you. And if you're driving around in a car with that campaign, you probably ought to be aware of it. So take some time, find your VIN. It's good to know. It's on your registration, it's on your insurance card. There's ways to find it spelled out pretty clearly on the NHTSA website. And plug that baby in every once in a while and just make sure you're not driving around in a dangerous car. I've got a little bit of follow up from last week's podcast. This from CBS News. Ford Motor on Wednesday said it is raising prices on three models produced in Mexico, pointing to higher U.S. tariffs on imported vehicles as one reason for the adjustment. The vehicles subject to the price increase of up to $2,000 per model include the Maverick, the Bronco Sport, and the Mach E. Ford said in a statement to CBS News, the price hikes apply only to imported vehicles that were built after May 2nd. Those models are expected to arrive at dealership lots in late June. Ford noted that cars that have already been shipped and that are currently at the dealer are not subject to the price hikes. Ford also said that the price increases are a result of our usual mid year pricing actions combined with tariffs we're facing. Reuters was the first to report Ford's price change. Well, there you have it. Ford, the prototypical American car company. The Bronco, the Maverick, the Mustang Mach E. Cars you would imagine. American cars. No, they're made in Mexico and they're subject to these tariffs. And it's going to affect you. You're already seeing it. And I know the article said that these price hikes were not going to affect cars at dealerships produced before May 2nd. I call a fat Joe Biden malarkey on that. Dealers are allowed to place what they call markup on the vehicle. If they know everything produced after May 2nd is going to be $2,000 more expensive, why would you sell a car built May 1st for $2,000 less if the market is going to allow for that extra $2,000? I don't buy that you're not going to see gouging from dealers on top of what's coming down from the manufacturers. This is going to hurt your pocketbook. There is no incentive for these manufacturers to not pass this cost on to you. They can, they will, and they already are. Continuing, the Trump administration in March imposed a 25% tariff on vehicles assembled abroad. Ford said it is shouldering some of the tariff related cost and has not passed all of the burden on to its customers. The U.S. imports roughly 8 million vehicles annually. Ford on Monday said it expects to take a $1.5 billion hit to its operational profit from tariffs this year. The Detroit automaker also withdrew its full year financial guidance because of mounting economic uncertainty created by the Trump administration's trade policies. For car buyers, higher U.S. tariffs on Ford made vehicles, along with regulatory levies from other countries, could raise the price of cars by $2,000 to $12,000, depending on the model, according to Anderson's economic group consulting and research firm. Ford Mach E, an electric version of the company's Mustang that is made in Mexico, faces tariffs of more than $12,000, according to AEG. By contrast, the automaker's Explorer SUV, which is manufactured in Illinois, faces levies of roughly $2,400. So it was recently announced, possibly today, certainly this week, that the Trump administration has reached an agreement with the United Kingdom that they're only going to tariff cars produced in the UK at 10%. So that's great if you're in the market for a Land Rover or an Aston Martin. And I don't know about you, but both of those rigs are well outside of my pocketbook. So who benefits from that, I wonder? Why are the cars for the everyday consumer produced by an American company subject to higher tariff rates that are being passed along to the consumer? Ask yourself. Okay, we've got some letters this week and questions. Hello, I really enjoy your videos and have a question for you. I have a 2015 Subaru Forester, and for the last 2 to 3 years, I have been having problems with my AC. It will run fine for the first 5 to 10 minutes, but then blows hot air. It's not consistent though. After a while, once it turns hot, it may turn cool again for a few minutes, and then back to hot, and this could happen a few times. I'm wondering if you have an idea of what I need, how much it'll cost, if anyone can do the repair, if I should go to the dealer. It's starting to get warm again, and I'm not looking forward to another horrible AC season. Appreciate any guidance you can give. Thank you. So, a few things jump out to me at that question. Let's start with what's most pertinent, I believe. No, you do not need to go to the dealer for this repair. I mentioned in my oil change video last week that hopefully you have a long standing relationship with some automotive service facility because whatever the failure is, competent though those you may know may be, this is not a repair you're likely to be able to take on at home. AC systems run on a principle of thermal exchange by the means of compressing a gas and releasing the gas. And the gas that is used in the case of a 2015 likely R134A is highly corrosive to the ozone layer, and its emission to the atmosphere is verboten and highly regulated. If you're going to work on an AC system, you must have a certification from the EPA, and you also need a set of specialty tools that are not readily available to the public. You're not likely to be able to walk into a Napa Auto Parts or a Harbor Freight and say, I'd like an AC servicing machine. They're usually available through Refrigerator, Snap on, bigger consumer business to business sales type tooling groups. So you're bound, unfortunately, to go to an automotive repair facility. Now, it doesn't need to be a dealer. Any ASE certified independent repair shop is going to have one of these sitting in the back somewhere. Maybe with the exception of new production cars, because very recently there was a mandated switch to a new refrigerant 1234YF. It's very expensive, and the machines used to service this system are also prohibitively expensive. And it's possible that your independent repair shop may not yet be equipped with a 1234YF system tool. But 2015, good to go. Go to your local shop, tell them what's going on, and they can take a look at it. Is it going to be expensive? Is the next question. In all likelihood, with an AC system, yes. The parts are expensive, and unless you've got like a leaking AC line that is easy to get at, the labor to remove the major components is usually pretty expensive as well. What I expect from the failure you're describing is that we likely do not have a leak. You're getting cold air at some times and not at others. So, in theory, all of the components are working in some fashion at some point. I suspect you've got one of two and possibly a third failure. One is that the clutch that drives your AC compressor that's belt driven on the front of your engine is either intermittently failing to engage the compressor or sticking in the on position and overcharging the system. Now, this very well may just be the relay, in which case you can count your lucky stars because that's as easy as pulling something out and plugging something in. Nothing needs to be drawn down. Maybe it's a $10 part, it'll take 2 minutes to install. At a minimum, you can expect that they're going to want to bring the vehicle in and pull all the refrigerant out of the system, confirm how much was in the system, put the thing under a deep vacuum, and make sure that it doesn't lose pressure over a period of time, which would indicate a leak. And then they're going to fill it with an inert gas, hopefully, probably nitrogen, and then a UV dye that they're going to run through the system. And with a special set of laser tag glasses and a UV light, look for a source of the leak. And they need to do that to start. Unless something jumps out at them and they can say, oh, look, the compressor's not working because the clutch isn't failing. I can see it right here. You need to make sure the base principles of the system are working, and that's where they're going to start. And that's probably going to cost you a couple $100. So they're going to do the AC leak test, and then they're going to say, okay, well, we had a good charge or we didn't have a good charge, and here's the leak, or we didn't find a leak. So let's go a little deeper. One possibility, let's say it's your AC compressor, $600 to $1,200, maybe more, and some new refrigerant. That's what you can expect. One possibility is that it's one of the blend doors in your dash. So, what's a blend door? You've got your hot air and heat controls inside the dash. You push them with a button. You used to turn a dial, they were vacuum operated. One possibility here is that everything in the system is working, and occasionally your blend door is going from directing the air past the AC condenser to directing the air past your heater core. And one reason I'm kind of wondering if that's not the possibility is because you said specifically in all capital letters that it was hot air. So it's very possible that everything in your AC system is working properly, and through some fault, which is yet to be determined, you're just getting full bore heater blown at you. In all likelihood, this is likely the worst possible outcome. Blend doors are buried deep in the dash, and they're fiddly and kind of hard to work on. And if we're talking about pulling a dash apart, you're talking something on the order of 8 to 12 hours of labor, depending on the market you're in, $165 to $224 an hour. So let's get you into a shop you trust. Let's start with an AC leak test. Have them do a dye test. Have them measure how much AC refrigerant is in the system, and then listen to their advice on what's the next best thing. Hopefully, they can discover the failure in the bay. One thing that you may well be up against is you do have what we call an intermittent failure. And why that's particularly fun is you may bring this into the shop and the technician pulls it into his bay and sticks a thermometer in the HVAC vents, and the thing blows cold for an hour and they never see the failure, and you're paid for an hour of time and we don't have a result. Can't duplicate it. If we can't duplicate it, we can't confirm and test the failure, and you'll have to come back. So one way to mitigate that is when you drop it off, tell them, hey, this is an intermittent failure. It doesn't happen all the time. And you should prepare to leave it there for a few days if you have to, and potentially authorize them, hey, if you need to, here's the keys. Take it to lunch, send it home with your technician. Just make sure you see this thing happen before you call me. Don't call me and say, we can't get it to happen. I'm prepared to leave it with you for a week and you're allowed to drive it. Make it happen. Let me know what the failure is and present me with a repair path. So, for the sake of maybe adding a few extra miles and being out of your car for a week, if you go in knowing maybe they're not going to be able to duplicate this and just give them the authorization off the bat, keep it. I'm fine without it. I've made plans to be out of my vehicle for a few days. Just make it happen. That's going to be easier for them. You're not going to be scrambling thinking you're going to drop it off and sit and wait and they're going to have an answer for you. Prepare for potentially a long haul on this one. Auto Shaman. I had several bumper stickers on my car which I once loved but are now fading. I have some new ones I'd like to install, but I don't want to just place them over the old sticker. I tried with an ice scraper and my fingernails but got nowhere in removing them. Please help. I like bumper stickers. I think they're fun. They very often make me laugh going down the road, and I support anyone who wants to put them on their car. But they do kind of wear out if you're not getting good ones. And if you get a good one, it's a lot of work to take it off when you're tired of it. So, what's the best way to remove a bumper sticker? Well, if you went to a shop, what they do is they'd use what's called a decal buffer. And the very best one is made by Snap On. and it's $400 to $500, and the wheels that they use are $30 a piece. So you probably don't have one of those laying around. If you have an electric drill at most parts store, they have what is essentially an eraser that's in a big circle that you can spin in your drill. And if you go very slowly and carefully, it'll sort of, just like an eraser on a pencil, scrub the bumper sticker off of your car. Now, if you're going to use one of these, you have to be very careful and go very slowly because they do spin fast enough to burn your paint. And it's not something that's going to buff out if you do it. So, this is for the more adventurous types who are good at being careful with things. Now, if you don't have an electric drill and you're not feeling up to being careful with an electric drill and a big eraser, about the best way you can remove a bumper sticker is with a heat gun or a very good hair dryer and a razor blade. What you'll want to do is heat it up as best you can till it just starts to be hot to the touch. You don't want to set this thing on fire. If you're not careful, you can burn your paint again. So as soon as you're starting to feel that thing get warm on the metal underneath the sticker, very carefully you can get behind it with a razor blade. And you've softened up the adhesive in this way, and the razor blade's going to let you get behind the backing of the sticker and scrape away the adhesive that's there. If you're going to put a bumper sticker on your car, I recommend the back glass or the plastic bumper. Those are the easiest places to remove a bumper sticker in the future. If you do make a little cut with the razor blade, take a little rubbing compound. It's likely just in the clear coat, and you should be able to just sort of buff it away as long as it's not too deep. No matter what way you're going to approach this, you need to go slow and take your time with it. Um, when you've got the sticker off, you can take a little like isopropyl alcohol, denatured alcohol, and a clean cloth and get the last little bit of the adhesive off your paint. Just use a lint-free cloth and rub it over. There's always going to be, they look like boogers. It's gross. There's always going to be some amount of dirty adhesive left behind when you pull a bumper sticker off. So just go slow, wipe up when you're done. When you put the new one on, good idea, take a little glass cleaner and clean the paint or the glass so that you don't get any dirt behind it. That'll kind of help in keeping it from falling off in the future. And that's a good practice too when you're installing your registration tabs. Don't put the sticker from the state that may have cost you a couple $100s on a dirty license plate. Wipe that thing off and then stick it on. And when you're looking for bumper stickers, if you want one that's going to last a long time, the ones printed on vinyl and the ones printed on like a steel backing, those puppies are going on and they're not coming off. So if you're just looking for temporary ones, look for ones that are on the thicker paper. If you know you love it and you don't want it to go anywhere, get a vinyl one, get yourself a metal backing. All right, everybody, appreciate your time. Thanks for listening this week. If you have questions for me, email me at the Auto Shaman podcast at gmail.com, SHAMAN at gmail.com. I've got another video coming out probably first part of next week. I've got the audio down and I'm just putting the thing together. It's going to be on the joys of owning a Jeep. So I'm sure people will have a lot of opinions about that one. Leave your comments down below. I'll answer questions there. Email me, follow me everywhere you can at the Auto Shaman. And as always, I appreciate your time.